should admit that I haven't been very collaborative in getting my images on the same laptop, and so I don't have any images to show you, but I do have some ideas to talk about. I think that this issue of collaboration is something for me as an artist coming from a Mexican American mixed race identity is something that is normative. That is something that I feel that giving back to the community and being part of a community is something that is part of my practice, and so the practice of collaborating is something that I approach. That's the foundation of the work, and I think that all of us would agree that that we all participate in this kind of this huge collaboration of what is the universe, right? And we're all in here with this new building, breathing in and out, and actually detoxifying all the new chemicals here, and in and out of our breath. So we're all kind of helping each other out, and without this kind of mass input from not only industry and people and humans and life from everywhere, we wouldn't be kind of here. So with that, this kind of collaborative normative kind of idea, I think that it is not a surprise that over the last decade or so, that collaborations have begun to become accepted, right, within the mainstream art world, within the art institutions, right? So social practices. I was at social practices at the California College of the Arts, this new MFA program, which has become institutionalized in public practices as well as in different institutions as well. So this kind of social practice, dialogical aesthetics, collaborative, it's the institutionalization has really come to the fore through, I think, not from the ground up, from this kind of DIY, anachronistic or democratic, anti-authoritarian perspective, right, from the ground up, where people are saying, wait a second, we want to kind of engage in creative practices where all of us are created equal at some level, right? We're participating in a consensus choice, which causes its own set of problems, but at the same time is very kind of against this modernist idea of the individual artist creating his or her own genius, or creating his own work through genius. So this kind of non-hierarchical consensus building model, I think, has been present and normative and something that I've worked from. And what I'm going to do is just give you kind of two ideas and two examples of those ideas that from my work in the past. And it really comes from the idea that dialogical practice can, first of all, create dialogues that are, in a sense, in non-art spaces and new media spaces, as well as the creation of social spaces that are unexpected. And so, one example of this is a poster that I created when I was at Arizona State on the fallen soldier in Afghanistan, Patrick Tillman, who was killed in 2004. Of course, he was an NFL football player who went to Afghanistan, he had this huge contract, and was an Army Ranger, went to Afghanistan, was disillusioned, ended up being killed by friendly fire amongst very questionable circumstances, right? So I created this poster called Friendly Fire, and it was questioning the construction of heroes by the right, using these images of Tillman specifically, and questioning how we kind of construct our heroes and how the right constructs these heroes for their own uses, especially since Tillman was an avid reader of Chomsky. He was against the war in Iraq, and he was kind of a voice of the progressive left. So this poster went up, and it became part of a public discourse, and it became taken down right away. It became taken to the news, and then the university that I was teaching at started to look at my classroom activities, and then it was put on CNN, and then there were hate mails and death threats, and Arizona Board of Regents was trying to fire me, etc. Just because of a poster, right? So if you think posters don't change things, they can kind of enter into a discourse. But the thing I want to bring up about this is the the new media kind of blog sphere, like this blog ire that is out there, where speech is seemingly from one end, but there is also a discourse that happens online. And I think that this discourse is really enlightening and deep if you look into it at certain points. And one example is on armyranger.net. There was a dialogue about my poster, about Tillman, and about what they should do about it, how they should react about these kind of former Rangers and also present Rangers. And on that website, there was the most kind of explicit death threat against me there. And so there was this discourse about, should we as Rangers be issuing death threats? And so it was surprisingly deep and interesting. And I was like, wow, they were considering these issues. And it really kind of came down to this idea of like, well, somebody said at the end of the dialogue, which is several threads, many pages, that, as Army Rangers, we are trained to kill enemies. We are not trained to kill assistant professors. And so I thought that was a really I didn't expect that type of dialogue to occur.
John, I just want to give you your 5-minute heads up.
Oh, good. So that's one example, I think, of how kind of art can kind of engage within a public discourse and give unexpected kind of dialogues of where in places that we don't expect either. Another one that just happened this Tuesday. I'm in residency at MACLA here in San Jose, and I'm working with a group of mariachis from Tucson, Arizona. We're putting on an opera, Days of the Dead opera, and part of our residency was to engage in the community in San Jose somehow. And we were looking at several kind of sites, and there was a site around the corner from MACLA, which is a laundromat. It's a laundromat which is, it had to be closed down because it's a hot spot for prostitution, drugs, shooting up, and kind of violence that had happened there too. So it had closed down. We had some dialogues with the owner, and the owner was really interested in doing something with the space, kind of engaging it. And so we decided to have a kind of a mariachi jam session there just this past Tuesday. We didn't really know what was happening, put the word out, and we just showed up and see what was going to happen. And what happened was very beautiful. There were people who came through, viejitos, old people came through with their seeds and wanted to listen to mariachi. People came up dressed as mariachi in their makeup with little calacas, and they came with their instruments and sang. And so there was this kind of jam session that happened really beautifully. At the same time, there was prostitutes in there, and drug dealers, and pimps, and so there was this kind of mix of discourse and dialogue and happening, listening to the music and requests that wasn't expected to happen within this laundromat, which is kind of a metaphor for the limpia, the cleaning of a space, the cleaning of a social space. So those types of moments, I think, and the generation of a social space or of difference within the publics, I think, is something that is an aim and a model, and also kind of giving the idea of giving up the idea to experimentation to see what